Recording stop. Okay. Today is May 26, 2024. This is the Israeli-Palestinian Confederation government proposing a federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine. We have a simulation with Professor Avner Cohen. We are proposing a federal government for the entire area that includes Gaza, the West Bank, Jerusalem, and Israel. Over 14 million people. A federal government that will be based on secular principles, based on true democracy, with separation of power between the parliament, the executive, and the judicial branch. We are proposing a common federal parliament for the people of Israel and Palestine with 300 parliament members, Palestinians and Israelis, that will be equal to each other. The president and the vice president will also be Palestinians and Israelis based on equality, and the judicial branch will also be Palestinians and Israelis based on equality. We are proposing this federal government to rely on a constitution. The constitution is available at ipconfederation.org. It's in 3 languages: Arabic, Hebrew, and English. You could read the entire Constitution by going to our website, and you can also read the frequently asked questions that discuss the relationship between the Israeli and the Palestinian governments and the federal government. We are not proposing the dismantling of the Israeli or the Palestinian governments. We are proposing a federal government that will be independent of the Israeli or the Palestinian governments, but it will be the government for the entire area, for the people of Palestine and Israel together, that will exist simultaneously, parallel to the Israeli and the Palestinian government, and will work with those governments to give peace to the people of Israel and Palestine. My name is Joseph Avasar. You could get a hold of me by email at josephavassar@gmail.com. Our guest today is Professor Avner Cohen. Trained as a philosopher and historian of ideas, Dr. Cohen turned early on in his career into nuclear history. He is widely known for his path-breaking historical studies of the Israeli nuclear program. He is a 2-time winner of the MacArthur Foundation Research and Writing Awards in 1990 and in 2004. He was also a senior fellow at the Woodrow Wilson Center in Washington, D.C. in 2008 to 2009. Currently, he is a global fellow with Nuclear Proliferation International History Project at the Woodrow Wilson Center. Dr. Cohen is the co-editor of Nuclear Weapons and the Future of Humanity and the Institution of Philosophy, and the author of The Nuclear Age as Moral History. His book, his most acclaimed books, Israel and the Bomb, was published by Columbia University Press in 1998. His latest book, The Worst Kept Secret, Israel's Bargain with the Bomb, was published in 2010 by Columbia University Press. In addition, Dr. Cohen has authored many monographs, online archival historical collection, scholarly articles, books, chapters, and short articles, and has been a prolific author of co-ops, co-eds, feature article and book reviews in the New York Times, Washington Post, Political, Haaretz, and many other American and Israeli newspapers since the 1970s. Professor Avner Cohen teaches at Middlebury Institute of International Studies. He received his PhD from the University of Chicago. I met with Professor Cohen about a week ago to discuss the simulation today. I usually meet with guests before in order to discuss what legislation will be discussed in the simulation. We were not able to do that, but so I chose the legislation on my own, and I hope it's okay with Professor Cohen. Our next guest on June 9 will be Professor Ori Yehudai. He is from the Ohio State University. He specializes in Zionism and modern Israel, the Arab-Israeli conflict. On June 23rd, we will have the dean of the previous dean of the Hebrew University Law School, Professor Barak Medina. And on July 7th, we will have Professor Amir Hetzroni, who is an anti-Zionist and is also a historian. He's a professor of communication, novelist, comedian, and social media personality. These are the people that previously were in the simulations. Some of them were 2 times, including Noam Chomsky, who was a guest twice, and he also recorded a video in support of our formula for peace for federal government. These are the people who we invited. We are still inviting, but many of them did not want to come or ignoring us or refused to come, but were invited many times. Hopefully they will come in a future date. The simulation usually takes 120 minutes. What we do is we show several segments. Each segment we open for questions and answers to the audience and an opportunity for the guest to make his comments and to ask his questions if necessary. We have a short video that explains what the IPC is about. It's 2 minutes, and I'd like to play it so that it makes it.
The conflict between Israelis and Palestinians has endured for generations. And instead of time healing the wounds, it's only caused the anger to fester and the violence to grow. But what if there was a way to alleviate the tension? Something that may not outright solve every problem, but at least create a forum that encourages a peaceful compromise. Welcome to the Israeli-Palestinian Confederation, a common third government between the Israeli and Palestinian citizens, specifically designed to foster peace, tolerance, and economic prosperity between the 2 nations. Here's how it works. First off, both Israel and Palestine will keep their respective governments. Israel's Knesset and the Palestinian National Authority will remain unchanged. The Israeli-Palestinian Confederation, IPC, will be a third entity acting as a unifying agent between the 2. The IPC will comprise 300 parliament members elected from 300 districts in Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. Above them will preside a president and vice president, 1 Israeli and 1 Palestinian. In order for the IPC to pass a law, it will require a 55% majority from its Israeli representatives, as well as a 55% majority from its Palestinian representatives, thereby preventing either side from monopolizing the legislature. Of course, the IPC won't undermine the political power of either the Israeli or the Palestinian government. At any time, Israel or Palestine may veto a law passed by the IPC. If neither side vetoes, the law is passed. And the two nations are another step closer to resolution. Please help us make this a reality. The Israeli-Palestinian Confederation. We might speak different languages, but we all mean the same thing.
So we are going to be simulating what's in the video. And we're going to start with a pre-simulation survey, which we will compare to a post-simulation survey. At the end of the simulation, we will do another survey. So at this time, I'm going to be asking you, the audience, please vote. Do you support a common federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine? Please vote. I know that some of you on the phone are not able to vote, but if you are able to vote, please do so at this time. And we will compare the vote at the end of the simulation. Okay, I'm going to give it another 10 seconds for people to vote, and then we'll register the vote. All right, go ahead and publish the vote. 93% voted yes. That's 25 out of 27. And 2 out of 27 voted no, which is 7%. I told Professor Cohen that a lot of the people that are participating in this simulation have participated before, so therefore the likelihood that we will have a yes vote is very high. All right, let's go to the next survey, and that is, please, I'm asking you to vote. Yes or no? Is Israel safe for the Jewish people? And we will have an open discussion at the end of the simulation. But this time we want to take a vote. If you feel Israel is safe for the Jewish people, you should vote yes. If you feel that it's not, you should vote no, and we will compare the vote as well. I'm going to give it another 10 seconds for people to vote. Is Israel safe? If you feel it's safe for the Jewish people, vote yes. If you feel it's no, vote no. Okay, so please publish the vote. 6 out of 26, 23% voted no, and 20 out of 26 voted, which is 77% voted. I'm sorry, 26 out of 26 voted yes, and 20 out of 26 voted no. So that means that 77% of the people who voted now feel that Israel is not safe for the Jewish people, and 23% of the people who voted now feel that Israel is safe for the Jewish people. We will conduct another survey at the end of the simulation, and we will compare the vote. The purpose of the simulation is to demonstrate how a common federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine could make peace. We are not following the Israeli or the Palestinian narrative. We are showing how a common federal government will have its own narrative, and its own narrative is for the benefit of the entire populations, Israelis and Palestinians together. Professor Cohen is not a representative of the IPC. He was invited, as we invite many other people, to stress this and to articulate his beliefs regarding the formula that we are showing him today. We expect to have a rigorous but respectable discussion. We do not preclude other formulas for peace, and we are not claiming exclusivity. We will ask Professor Cohen to articulate his reasoning regarding the formula that we are presenting, but we're asking him to be fair. We're also asking all of you to be fair, to judge the formula not based on perfection, but what's the alternative. The purpose of the simulation is to show, to demonstrate that the federal government could propose legislation that both the Israeli and the Palestinian governments will have to accept, because if they do not accept, they will lose legitimacy because the legislation supports and is beneficial to the people themselves. So they will have to accept and will not veto a lot of the legislation because it is beneficial to the people of Israel and Palestine. And if they do veto, they will lose legitimacy. We're asking you to look at the big pictures and avoid technical arguments. And we're asking you, the audience, to refrain from comments, but we encourage questions. A confederation government exists worldwide to address specific conflicts. Some governments refer to themselves as a federal government, while others use the term confederation. Definitions are not fixed and evolve with changing realities. In the context of Israel-Palestine, we define confederation as a shared government for the people of Israel and Palestine, guided by democratic principles outlined in the IPC Constitution, which can be found at ipconfederation.org. In other words, we are not limited to the definition of confederation or federation. We are creating our own definition. We are simulating how this common federal government will work. This is not a lecture, this is a simulation. We appreciate questions. So if you ask me, Joseph, how does this plane fly? That's a legitimate question. But we discourage comments. If you say, I do not like airplanes because they cause pollution and they're unsafe, that's a comment. Please keep the comments to the end or put them in the chat. But give us an opportunity to show you how this federal government could make peace. Questions help understand the concept. Comments derail the simulation while preventing a full, uninterrupted presentation. We're asking for your courtesy in allowing us a full opportunity to present the IPC formula. Make your comments at the end or write them on the Zoom chat feature. This is the heart of the simulations. We're going to ask you to make assumptions in order to conduct the simulation. And the first assumption is that we were able to obtain major funding in order to have a 1-year-long campaign to promote the election. What does it mean? That we were able to promote the idea of a federal government in Israel and Palestine, to the people of Israel and Palestine and to the people of the world. That we had a full opportunity to do so and to encourage political discussion in Israel and Palestine and around the world about the benefit of a federal government. That we were able to recruit Palestinians and Israelis to run for parliament and for president and vice president. And that we were able to create a platform for an election that would allow 14 million people to vote, Palestinians and Israelis, with the exclusion of children. You will also have to assume that the election actually took place and it lasted 3 months. And the people of Israel, Palestine, with the exclusion of children, were allowed to vote, and that they did vote. You will have to assume that 5 million people voted, and 3 million of them are Palestinians, and 2 million of them are Israelis. You will have to assume that 1.5 million people voted for the president, for the purpose of conducting this simulation, I want you to assume that me, Joseph, was elected as president, even though I do not intend to ever run for president. I'm not even qualified under the Constitution. But I want you to assume for the purpose of this simulation that I was elected by 1.5 million people, and I'm going to act as if I was elected in this simulation. I also want you to assume that a vice president, Palestinian lady, received 1.3 million votes, and we will rotate. I will become vice president in 2 years. She will become president in 2 years. I also want you to assume that 300 parliament members were elected in 300 districts, Palestinians and Israelis together, elected to represent the parliament in the common federal government. Each parliament member represents 47,000 people in their own district, and their focus is their district. They're obligated to do the best for their district. So before I turn to Professor Cohen to make remarks, I'm going to ask you, the audience, do you have any questions? Not comments, but questions regarding those assumptions. Please speak up. Do you have any questions regarding those assumptions? Raise your hand or just speak up if you have any questions relating to those assumptions. I see no questions. I don't see any hand being raised. So I'm going to go to Professor Cohen.
There's one hand that was up.
Okay, whose hand was that?
Hike Mori.
Okay, could you ask your question, please? All right, let me go to Professor Cohen. Professor Cohen, do you have any comments or questions regarding those assumptions?
I have a lot of comments. Do you want me to speak right now? You want me to wait, or?
Yes, I
Sure.
want you to
Sure.
state your comments or your
Okay.
questions regarding the assumptions, not.
Yeah. No, it's regarding to the whole idea. Good morning to everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you. To be completely honest, I'm a little bit here by mistake. When Joseph invited me, I have not read carefully the invitation letter, and I have not even looked into the website. Since I'm a proponent for the idea of Israeli-Palestinian reconciliation, since I'm a proponent of the idea of Palestinian state, I thought it's going to be a panel discussion. I didn't understand even in full clarity the idea of simulations. I responded too fast and I said yes. And after that, when we had a chance to talk, when I understood better, more, what the idea of this platform is all about, I realized that I'm pretty far away from that. But since I said yes, and I explained that to Yossi, I felt I'm obligated to be with you to explain where I stand on this issue, to the extent that there is interest to hear my views on that. And I treat the whole thing as, to some extent, an exercise, intellectual exercise. At a certain mood, I may call it some kind of well, maybe I'm not going to say it right now, but I have very little faith in this idea. I think it's premature. I think first we need to have major, it's not ripe, major reconciliation between the two sides of this terrible conflict, in particular in these days when the conflict is killing so many on this precious land. There is need to work on this reconciliation. Ultimately, I hope in time, I'm not even sure it will happen in my own lifetime, but I hope it would lead to a Palestinian state. and what would be the future relationship between a Palestinian state to the existing state of Israel? It's up to the people. One of the options could be a confederation. Confederation in terms of political history is something quite rare. I'm not ruling it out. I don't think it's terribly likely, but the conditions for that, and it has to come organically from the people in a real political process, in deliberation between the two communities. It needs to have some roots within the two communities, and then, if at all, to have some kind of discussion and negotiations. I do not believe at all in the idea, with all the goodwill of Yossi, that you impose some idea from the above. Whoever smart or not so smart write some proposals, some constitutions, and people would adopt it. This is not organic process. This is not a real political process. But I'm here not only because I promised Yossi and I didn't want to break my word, but also because I think that in terms of the region, there is, especially these days, there is nothing that is more precious and more important than to contribute to Israeli-Palestinian reconciliation. It's terribly tough right now. I think that the population of both sides have been, given what happened since October 7th, has been distanced further. There is much lack of confidence. There is much lack of readiness to recognize the rights and the histories of each other. But I think this is the real interest. The region, the people need that. And for that reason, to be part of that overall view, I felt that since I already told Yossi, yes, I'll be there, so that's where I'm going to be. I have very little confidence or support to this particular idea. I don't believe it's feasible. I think it's totally not ripe and premature. But it's still, I understand that all of you have interest in the region, would like to see the region in a better shape, in a better form than the terrible situation of today. And I thought it would be just fair and right to be with you and to have some kind of discussions. The idea of simulation is that there is already a great deal of agreement, and you talk about technicalities and specific issues. Personally, I'm not there. So simulation in that respect is not really for me. And honestly, I may leave a little earlier if the discussion will go to directions that I feel uncomfortable. But I came here to be with you simply to express my own personal view that there is nothing for people who are close to the region, who are, I understand that some of you were born in the region, feel the preciousness of this region that the three monotheistic religions were born, great history was shaped. I have a great deal of sentiments to Israel, the country that I was born, and in recent years, in recent decades, has gone astray. But I still care a great deal, and that's why I'm here. So that's my very, very few introductory comments, and I will be happy to be engaged to the extent that Yossi and others would like me to be here.
So Professor Cohen, I want to hold your feet to the fire and ask you, are you able to articulate a specific substantive argument
I think so.
against these assumptions?
Yeah.
We are presenting assumptions. What's in these assumptions is unrealistic.
I think my entire view is that it's premature, and I think that I can explain in more details. To talk about confederation, and confederation semantically speaking is different from federation, you need to talk about two political existing entities that out of deliberation, out of discussion, have come to the conclusions that it will be a mutual benefits to create some framework of confederation that would serve them in some specific areas, that it's good for them to be united, at least in some fronts, in some areas, in some realms, and it would serve the interests of both sides. We are so far from that. There is no Palestinian state right now. Israel the relationship between the two parties in this conflict are dramatically different, the power relationship. Even though that demographically the Palestinian number is tiny bit, it appears larger than the Israeli community. So maybe among the 14 million, roughly 40 million, there is slightly more than 7 million Palestinian and maybe slightly less or just about 7 million Jews. The power relations between Israel as a state, as a Jewish state, and the non-existent, right now we talk about Palestinian Authority, which is terribly weak. And in Gaza, we have the Hamas, which no major player is ready to talk about and to accept it as a partner. So there is no two entities that could negotiate in any way with any sense of asymmetry about a future confederation. And that's why I think the idea is extremely premature, it's not ripe, and there are much more urgent issues in this context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to talk about it rather than a very imaginary, I don't want to say lunatic because I don't want to insult anybody, idea of confederations. Also, I don't believe that ideas of confederation could be created by somebody intellectually outside with some putting various kind of arbitrary assumptions. It needs to be discussed a great deal by members and parties within each of these communities. It will take time. It needs time to organically to evolve. And maybe at some point, definitely will not happen in my lifetime, it cannot be ruled out, and maybe it could be a viable view at that future state of affairs. It is not right now, and I think it's almost exercising futility to discuss that.
All right, so from what I understand from you, a confederation or federal government could come from the...
It's not the same, by the way. Confederation and
Yeah,
federal, it's
I
not the
agree.
same. Yeah.
We have our own definition,
Well,
but
there is a semantic
we
definition
have
of idea of confederation.
we have our own definition, but we say that since the Israeli government for 75 years has not been able to achieve anything of that nature that you were speaking about, and the Palestinian government
was unable to, it did not want to achieve, was not interested to achieve.
Right.
Look at the difficulties to have a Palestinian state. Right now, the majority of the Israeli public reject that, unfortunately.
Right. So what's wrong in the people of Israel and Palestine voting on their own for a federal government, and regardless of whether the Israeli or the Palestinian governments are wanting it? You say, you seem to think that it's an idea of one person or few person. Yes. Theodore Herzl was one person who came up with an idea.
But he was able to create institutions and support, and ultimately it was the Holocaust who made the state of Israel possible, unfortunately.
So do we need another tragedy? Why can't we have online elections and have the people of Israel and Palestine express themselves by way of an election? Because we now live in the age of the internet, and we are able to advance elections and create elections by way of the internet, just like it was when democracy was created to begin with. When the paper came about, it helped democracy because people were able to vote using papers and ignore the king, ignore the power to be, and said, we are going to create our own government. What's wrong with that?
You see, the real answer is there is no interest in that. There is no tiny interest in either side, definitely not in the Israeli side. And that's the reason why this idea right now does not get anywhere.
How do you know there? How do you know there is no interest?
Look, how do I know that? Because there is no interest. You know that. To look at the situation on the ground.
But
I mean,
it's,
the very idea of
it hasn't
Palestinian
been
state,
presented to them. It hasn't been presented
it's not
to
a question
them.
of presentation.
Well,
As I said,
so-
a condition for that is to have the two entities in reality. There is no Palestinian political entity in reality as a state. There is a weak Palestinian authority. Israel, the state of Israel, is not even ready to negotiate about becoming a state. We are in a very, very different universe than a universe that is suitable to talk about confederation. Just
okay.
be real, Joseph, with all due respect.
Okay. Is the assumption of major funding, is that feasible?
No, I mean, the issue is not funding. Funding is a technical issue. If there is
Okay.
interest, there is funding, but there is no interest.
Okay.
It's outside any political reality. It's imaginary. It doesn't attach to any concrete reality where we are now. And I think somebody there wants to speak. I think Shlomo Or wants to say something.
Yeah. Is the idea of 5 million people voting, is that imaginative?
I don't think they have interest to vote on this imaginary issue.
Well,
It
how do you
doesn't
know they
relate to
don't have?
anything.
How do you know? It's never been presented. It's
not
never
a
been
question of
presented. All right. I think we, Shlomo, if you have a question, because we are not going to have, if you have a question, please speak up and ask your question. But all right, we're going to go and move.
My
You
question
have a
is why
question,
not to have
Shlomo?
given Avner's position and good points, why won't we have a discussion now rather than continuing with it? Eventually, I'm afraid that Avner will leave us. So
Correct.
take
Okay,
advantage.
it's up to him. That's his. That's up to
Well,
him.
Avner is trying to be
But
courteous and to be
you're not going to
respectful,
change.
so he will
You're
stay
not going
here
to
for a
change.
while.
No, we're not going to change the simulation. It's if Avner wants to leave, that's up to him. It's
Yeah,
we're not going to
but
change the simulation.
I
Okay.
suggest to be more flexible
All right.
this time,
Okay.
just because of the situation, and have some discussion. He
Well,
has some good points, and I
Avner
have
has
some.
to be. No, we have a simulation. We have audience that was invited to a simulation, and it's up to him. We can conduct the simulation whether he is here or not. It's up to him. He will set his record straight by leaving or not. That's not the question. Okay, I'm going to be asking the audience now to choose whether they want to be Israeli or Palestinian parliament members in this simulation. This is the area of Israel and Palestine. You need to choose whether you are Israeli or Palestinian parliament members, and what area do you represent. You represent a mixed area or a strict Palestinian or Israeli. However, before I do that, so I need a volunteer to be the Prime Minister of Israel. Is there someone who is volunteering to be the Prime Minister of Israel in this simulation? Do I have a volunteer to be the Prime Minister of Israel? I need your help here.
I can be.
Avner, are you willing to be the Prime
No,
Minister?
I'm not. I'm
Okay.
not. Look, I think it will be better to have discussion. And let's say Shlomo wants to say something. I would love to hear what he has to say.
We're not going to have a discussion unless we demonstrate what it does. While a discussion is going to kidnap the discussion, we are here to demonstrate how a federal government is going to work. It's up to you to decide whether you want to leave. Do I have
You invited him to have input.
No,
So-
I invited him to speak at the simulation. Stop arguing with me about that, okay? All right. Do we have a Prime Minister of Israel? Giacomo, you're willing to be a Prime Minister of Israel?
I'm always ready to be the bad guy.
Okay. Do we have the Palestinian, someone who's willing to be the Palestinian president?
As you know, by the way, politically, there is almost no Israeli would be a prime minister in that kind of situation. There is no any interest in that, and I can see virtually no Israeli who acting as a prime minister in that kind of setting. It's so imaginary. It's so lunatic.
Okay. is anyone willing to be the president of Palestine in this simulation? Please speak up.
I'd
President.
be willing to, and I'm not an Israeli.
Okay, Michael, you're the president of Palestine?
Yes, I'll be the president of Palestine.
Okay, great. Thank you.
My grandfather's sister moved to Palestine in 1900.
Okay. It's not about you personally, it's about whether you're assuming the role of, all right, now I'm gonna ask you, the audience, to decide whether you are Palestinian or Israeli parliament members. Please vote. If you are a Palestinian parliament member or Israeli parliament members, please identify yourself. And I'll ask you what area you represent. Okay, give it 5 more seconds. We have, please publish the vote. We have 15 Palestinian and 7 Israeli parliament member in this simulation. Stop sharing. And we are going to go over the first order of business for the parliament to ratify the Constitution. Libby, are you here to read the short version of the Constitution?
Yes. We believe that Palestinians and Israelis are entitled to equal rights under the law and guaranteed full human rights and freedom. The Israeli-Palestinian Confederation does not intend to supersede or supplant the Palestinian or Israeli governments, nor to abrogate or undermine any agreements between those governments. We recognize the need to work with the Israeli and Palestinian governments. Our purpose is to resolve conflicts and to expand the relationship between Palestinians and Israelis in a fair and equitable manner. We believe in equal rights under the law, guaranteed human rights, and freedom for all. We voluntarily give the legislatures and the governments of Israel and Palestine veto power over legislation we pass relating to the domain of control of those governments. We believe in the separation of power between the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. We believe in the creation of a permanent secular government for all the people residing in Israel and Palestine. We believe in having a separate judicial branch relating to the IPC legislation with Israeli and Palestinian judges, with a system to avoid biased decisions based on nationality.
All right, so the important part of this short version of the Constitution is that the federal government does not intend to supersede or supplant the Israeli or the Palestinian governments, and intend to respect and accept any agreements between the Israeli and the Palestinian governments. If they agree on a 2-state solution or 1-state solution, constitutionally, the federal government accepts that agreement. We also agreed to give us a veto power to the Israeli and the Palestinian governments if the legislation we pass violates the sovereignty of the Israeli or the Palestinian governments. Does anyone have any questions from the audience? Do you have any questions regarding this Constitution? Questions, please. Okay, I hear no questions. I'm going to go to Professor Avner Cohen and ask you if you have any questions or comments regarding this Constitution before we ratify the Constitution, before the Parliament ratifies it.
I will just reiterate what I already said. I think this constitution is completely arbitrary. It doesn't reflect any political reality. It doesn't reflect any power relations. It doesn't reflect any state of historical ripeness towards moving towards that stage. Somebody was sitting in his room and wrote something out of their own mind, and there is a constitution. I don't think it's. I think it just, as I say, it's exercise in futility.
Do you object to any language that appears in this constitution specifically? Anything that
I
you
object to
find
the whole
objectionable?
document because the document, a real document towards confederation, needs to be done and needs to be created, needs to be involved as a result of a real interest by the two communities after a great deal of political negotiation and bargaining. And out of that, this is just arbitrary. And I'll say one thing. Because right now the power relations is so much on the side of Israel, it's unlikely, even if you still keep the national institution as is, that whatever you want, new body of confederation you want to create, they're going to be advisory and very, very, very weak, clearly. Because
regarding
Israel is,
the
let me finish
itself,
now. Because Israel is not going to give up an Israeli at the present time, any of its powers. So even if there is reconciliation of the conflict, and even if there is a Palestinian state, I think the area of agreements towards constitution, towards confederation, will be, at least in the first stage, rather limited. For example, security, could be water rights, could be environmental issue, could be very, very specific issues. I think that the historical record and also the records of the region itself, from an effort to live in one state, and we saw it elsewhere in the world, is that it will lead to bloodshed. The idea of one state will lead to bloodshed. So therefore, the elements that could be negotiated, that could be under some kind of common framework, are relatively limited. And there are those areas that people in both communities think that there must be some kind of sharing. Must be in some kind of common cooperations, not all areas. And therefore a constitution should be very, very limited.
The area has bloodshed for 75 years.
Yeah.
So
the communities continue with that.
Why are you refusing to accept another
Because
formula?
first, I think you need to accept the Palestinian
relying on the
state.
bloodshed argument?
No, the bloodshed argument should lead to a way for both communities to deal with each other politically as somewhat equal to a negotiation. We are not even there. So how can we talk about confederation?
Are you able to articulate substantive argument regarding the Constitution, the language of the Constitution that is in front of you?
I think it's arbitrary. I don't even want to go into the details. I think
So
it's
you
completely
cannot
arbitrary.
speak about anything that is
I don't want to,
specifically-
no.
All right.
No.
Okay, let's have the, now, before I ask the Parliament to ratify, please note that you've been chosen to be the Parliament members, and you have to ratify the Constitution. If you do not ratify it, you will be expelled from the Parliament, and you will not be able to vote on legislation. Let's have the Palestinian Parliament members please vote to ratify the Constitution. Palestinian Parliament members. Publish the vote. 100% of the Palestinian Parliament members voted in favor of this Constitution. Let's go to the Israeli Parliament members. Please vote. Publish the vote. 100% of the Israeli Parliament members voted in favor of this Constitution. Stop sharing. Thank you. So this is a momentous event in the history of Israel-Palestine. It's the first time in the history of Israel-Palestine that the people of Israel and Palestine agreed on a constitution, agreed on a common federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine, and have chosen their own path, not the path that was given to them by the Israeli or the Palestinian governments. And we are now, it's an event of momentous magnitude around the world. And me as the president, I am going to capitalize on that momentous event. Let's go to the next legislation. This is not part of the Constitution, but the legislation. Libby, could you read the next legislation?
All right, this is granting a veto power to the separate governments. The Confederation is the government of the entire population of Israel and Palestine from the river to the sea. We recognize the Palestinian and Israeli governments and are seeking their cooperation to implement our vision for peace by giving them a veto. We will do our utmost to satisfy the essential needs of each government. We are pleading with the Palestinian and Israeli public to understand that while we would like to pass the best legislation possible to improve their lives, under these constraints, a perfect legislation is not possible. We hereby bestow a veto power relating to legislation affecting sovereignty to the following: the government of Israel on issues in which it is indispensable, the Palestinian government on issues in which it is indispensable. In the event of changes in the entirety of the Israeli or Palestinian governments, this legislation may be amended or repealed subject to the IPC Constitution. The Parliament will decide on indispensability. Vetoes may be bestowed individually or collectively.
All right. The difference between dispensable and indispensable. A government is indispensable if its cooperation is necessary to implement the IPC legislation. Example, use of land, police force, removal of the wall. Those issues, the government of Israel and Palestine are indispensable. However, issues relating to our budget, ratifying the Constitution, or appointing IPC ministers, the government of Israel and Palestine are dispensable and will not have a veto power on those issues. So I'm asked why a veto power is necessary to begin with. A veto power provides a safety net to both sides. It increases the likelihood of Israelis and Palestinians' participation. It decreases the Israeli and Palestinian government's opposition to the federal government. It removes any claims that the IPC has subversive intentions and gives legal protection to the candidates so that they will not be concerned about opposing their own governments or being subject to criminal prosecution. A veto power compels the IPC to thread the needle to find the least objectionable legislation to pass in order to give legitimacy to the people of Israel and Palestine and to their governments. It creates a platform for negotiations with the deadline. Does anyone have any questions or comments regarding the veto power, the legislation, before we take a vote and before we go to Professor Avner Cohen for his comments and questions? Does anyone have any questions regarding the veto power? Please raise your hand. Okay. I see no hands being raised. There are no questions. Let's go to Professor Avner Cohen. Professor Cohen, do you have any questions? Or
no, I don't have a question. As you know what I think about the whole process, I'm not going to repeat what I already said. I would have just one comment analytically. As I see it, the veto power would be very powerful in itself. That is to say, it would include a lot of areas of concerns. Even if something like that would be discussed, I'm not saying imposed, but would be discussed, because Israel right now has so much power, its readiness to give up its power on issue of mutual control will be very, very limited. So I see, analytically speaking, that whatever institutions you have, I mean, you talk about government and governance, would be very little governance or government in the sense of power. It will be a very consultancy, advisory, something at the level of House of Lords, some kind of a place to discuss ideas. I see that kind of institution terribly weak, even if it will be agreement to go towards that, which, as I said, I think it's futile. Because of the current asymmetry. I mean, I think part of the real painful about the structure of the conflict is the fact that even though the communities are almost symmetrical in terms of population, in terms of demography, the fact that Israel has so much of the power, including nuclear weapons, and it creates a situation that the very idea of negotiations, the very idea of giving a space to the other community, especially the community that is not there yet, Palestinian state, is so difficult. We saw it before, essentially at any level of negotiations, and how to overcome that difficulties and what should be the place of a broker, outside broker, a third party broker, international community is very, very important. And we don't know that much about it. But I just want to point out analytically that it's so different to create, to set up the framework for negotiations when the two communities and the actual power is so asymmetrical. And part of the tragedy of the conflict is that currently this huge gap in terms of power is very frustrating, and it makes very difficult to have a fair negotiation towards something.
Well, yeah, this is not about negotiation. This is about a federal government that will vote on issues and will be able to view the conflict in a completely different narrative than the Israeli and the Palestinian governments.
Yeah. So as I told you, I see no chance whatsoever for that kind of thing. I think it's, I don't want to repeat, but it's an exercise in
Okay, but I still don't understand when you say no chance. Are you saying there would be people?
There is no interest by the communities, and especially by the stronger
How do you
community.
know there is no interest? It's
I see it in every poll. This is not any feasible political idea. Nobody discussed it.
Yes.
Even to discuss Palestinian state, it's painful.
That does not mean that there is no interest, because the people of Israel and Palestine are not aware of it.
Be serious. I'm not aware of that.
But that's not a response.
You don't need that much political imagination to be aware of that. Of course they're aware of that. There is no interest in that. It's not feasible.
I am showing you specific fact that the people of Israel and Palestine are not aware of that possibility. And you're not responding to that argument.
It's not questions of awareness. It doesn't have a political space to negotiate. There is just no interest. As I said, to talk about confederation, you need to have two existing entities, states. We are so far, unfortunately, from having a Palestinian state. So it's so premature to discuss it.
Well, the Palestinian state and the Israeli state have been negotiating. The UN voted on a Palestinian and Israeli state in 1947, and it hasn't come about.
Ultimately, Israel created its own state, and it was Israel declared, fought for it, and created it. It was not given to it. The Palestinian state was not created, for better or worse, and we're living with this tragedy ever since.
Right. And you're saying,
so the first stage is to have something that would be accepted by the stronger power in this conflict, by Israel, to have a Palestinian state. And we see how much this idea, unfortunately, is being opposed as of now by most of the Israeli public.
Let me
So
ask
first
you
we have to put all our energy to change the Israeli political agenda, to change also something among the Palestinians, and to create the feasibility of a Palestinian state. We are far away from that
Let me ask
point.
you a question, please. Do you agree that all Israeli governments since the creation of Israel's 1948 have failed to give peace to the people of Israel and Palestine?
Yes, I mean there is there is 76 years of
All right.
lack of peace
Your
between the two
argument
communities.
is you're saying, yes, I agree that they failed to give peace to the people of Israel and Palestine for 76 years, but your argument is,
Look, until
let's
67, there was
go to
not even
these
the
people.
minimum
Let's go.
conditions to do
Let me
that.
finish, please. Let me finish. Your argument is, let's go to the people that you admit are a failure for 76 years and say, well, we should allow them to be the people who will create the formula for our future.
No, but they're the people and it should be their will. And you cannot impose. Nobody from Los Angeles or anywhere else could impose on them. If they have been failed, if it has been futile for them, who are we to impose? There is no way to impose it from the outside.
Wasn't Zionism imposed on the Palestinians
No.
from Vienna?
The Jewish people ultimately, and as I said earlier in the comment I made, it was the Holocaust who created the reality. I don't know if a Jewish state would have been created without the Holocaust.
Okay,
it's
so
open
that's
question.
still
But the fact is that gradually and slowly, even though it was minority, you know, there was a creation of the Yishuv. Whether the Yishuv could have had enough critical mass to create a state, open question. The Holocaust made it a reality internationally, and after that, Israel created itself as effects on the ground.
Let me ask you a question about power. Do you view power in terms of military power or in terms of democratic power?
Power has a lot of dimensions, including militarily, including democratic, including economic, all sorts of dimensions. Militarily is hard power, and when one party has so much possession of the party and is able to impose that much, and the other side is so weak, that creates a very unfortunate situation for negotiation, even though in the case the two communities are almost equal in terms of demography. So power is a factor, and it's very difficult to persuade a country, especially a country that has moved so far to the right, to seriously to negotiate with the other side. Israel itself need to have a full soul searching and change and transformation through leadership, through a lot of changes that I hope and I pray will happen soon. But as of now, I do not see them happening. Look how much difficult it is right now when 70% of the Israelis would like to remove and depose the Netanyahu government. They are still unable to do it 8 years after this fucking war. Look what's going on here.
Okay.
So do you expect them to do something so far away from that?
Well,
they have been failing to remove this terrible government that so many of them, the majority of them, believe is ruling and unable to get any of the objectives of this terrible war.
All right,
and yet nothing happened politically.
Let me tell you what's my analysis of your objection. My analysis of your objection is that you see the conflict in the context of the existing reality, and you do not see it in the context of another reality. You are not able to, you only see it in the context of Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but you are not able to see it in creating a different reality. That to you is
Look, I told you from the very beginning that I'm here to try to play to some extent, to the extent that since you invited me and since I agreed, it's intellectual exercise. But even the assumption for that intellectual exercise has to be clarified. And I think that to get out of where we are into any place that there is a room for that intellectual exercise, there is a great deal of distance.
All right, let's take a vote.
But please give other people to talk.
We are going to have an open discussion, but please try not to control the simulation. This is a simulation. We worked hard to create it, and well, we're going to have an open discussion. But we are here to demonstrate the IPC, and then we'll have an open discussion. But try not to control what we are doing. Let's have the Palestinian parliament members please vote on granting the veto power. Do you support veto power? Palestinian parliament members. Okay, let's end the polling. 100% of those who voted yes. Let's go to the Israeli parliament members. Israeli parliament members, please vote on granting the veto power. Israeli parliament members. Publish the vote. 88% of the Israeli parliament members agree to give a veto power. Let's go to, so the Israeli and the Palestinian parliament members of government do not have a veto power on this. This is internally to the Israeli and the Palestinian, to the federal government. Rebuilding Gaza and Southern Israel. Charles, are you here? Okay, Libby, could you read the legislation regarding rebuilding Gaza and Southern Israel?
Okay. The IPC is the only legitimate government in Israel and Palestine, consisting of 300 parliament members elected by the entire population. Approximately 125 members represent the destroyed areas. The IPC is committed to the well-being of all people, including the 5 million individuals directly affected by the violence since October 7th. The IPC believes that the future of the Gaza and Israeli people is interconnected. It is unlikely that the Israeli and Palestinian governments will be able to restore a normal, peaceful existence in the foreseeable future. The IPC is requesting $50 billion grant from the international community, which includes Israel and Palestine, to fund and coordinate the rebuilding of the devastated areas. The IPC will prioritize the following. 1, rebuilding thousands of homes, roads, hospitals, civic buildings, and the infrastructure to facilitate the immediate return of all people to their homes. And 2, restoring law and order and civil society that have been destroyed. 3, developing safe routes for peaceful movement of Palestinians between the West Bank and Gaza in both directions. To achieve this rebuilding, the IPC is calling for an immediate ceasefire and the immediate return of all political prisoners in Israel and Palestine to their homes. Both the Israeli and Palestinian governments are given veto power.
All right. Do the people in the audience, do you have any questions regarding this legislation? Please raise your hand. Okay, I see no hands being raised. Going to go to Professor Cohen to make his comments and questions, and then we'll go to voting. And we'll give a Israeli and Palestinian parliament government a veto power. Professor Cohen?
Well, I mean, this particular issue just shows how much, at least in my view, I think the whole thing is completely exercised in imagination, but it's out of reality. I think that there is no question that there's both sides are. Maybe even before that, I will emphasize that I talked about the difference in power and difference in power relations. Look, Palestinians so far have 35,000 casualties. No matter how many of them are Hamas members, how many of them are non-combatants, including children and women and others. Israel had some 1,600 of its own casualties. each communities treat and deal with the questions of the losses in a very, very different way. Israel, because of its humiliation, went into a campaign of vengeance, of retributions, of retaliation, and this was unfortunately much of that war. To think that after that, after 70% of possibly of the Gaza landscape small of 364 kilometers square, have been put into platitude, into destructions, into devastation, that they are going to share reconstitutions and restorations and rebuilding, it's out of your mind. Obviously, each community will do it in its own way, to the satisfaction of its own needs, in the way it does it through its own institutions. I hope that after this bloody war is over, and my own view is that it should be over now, including release of all the hostages, there will be restoration of the Palestinian side, but Israel would not have part of that, even though Israel may have some veto power how it will be done. It will be different communities, international communities, who will give the money, it will give the energy to do that. I just do not see any way to do it jointly. I think it just shows how much this exercise is out in touch, unfortunately. But I really would like to hear views of others, and I should note that a friend of mine is here on the audience, Anat Beletsky, a friend for decades, and I would love to hear what she thinks about it too.
Okay, we will have an open discussion. You keep trying to control the simulation.
Well, you invited me, otherwise I
I
would not be here.
invited you to participate, not
And I told you in
not
our
to
preliminary
control.
conversation that I do not
Look,
accept the
this is
presumption.
I invited you to speak, and I'm giving you the opportunity to speak. We will have an open discussion. I did not invite you to kidnap the conversation.
No, but I told you what I think about
another
it.
conversation. I'm sorry.
And I hesitated whether to
Let's have the
participate or not,
Palestinian.
and
the
you persuaded me
Palestinian-
to participate.
Look, we are here to demonstrate how the common federal government will work, whether you believe in it or not. We are giving you an opportunity to be doubtful, fine, but we're not giving you an opportunity to change the conversation. Okay? Let's have the Palestinian parliament members please vote. Palestinian parliament members. Okay. Publish the vote. 100% of those who voted yes. Let's have the Israeli parliament members vote hopefully yes. Israeli parliament members, please vote. Publish the vote. 88% of the Israeli parliament members voted yes. So, Professor Cohen, despite your objection and calling it unrealistic, you should be paying attention to the fact that the audience, the parliament members, are voting contrary to your views. And so that should give you some sort of idea that your total rejection of it is not accepted by most people, at least that are on this live event.
Can I respond?
Sure.
Look, Yossi, the people here, most of them are people that for a long time you have been cultivated to be part of this forum.
Correct.
This forum has a certain kind of presumptions, so it's not surprising, but it's still out of touch with any current political reality. And I, for one, am not be part of this exercise of futility that wants to go to this.
So that goes back to the assumption. You said that's not surprising. And that's exactly what we are speaking about. 1 year campaign of teaching the people of Israel and Palestine that there is another alternative, at which point your response, that's not surprising, that they accept that formula will also go to the people of Israel and Palestine. I can tell you that when we started these simulations, most people were not aware of this formula, and now they're accepting. And your response that they are accepting because they are aware of it is the best argument in favor of having a 1-year period of explaining to the people of Israel and Palestine how it will work. Okay, let's go to the joint, let's go to the Israeli Prime Minister. Mr. President, Prime Minister, are you going to veto this legislation?
I am vetoing this legislation.
Okay, the entirety or?
The only thing I like about it is the 50 billion grant from the international community, which would save us some money. So if you can change the thing, remove completely any reference to a ceasefire, and instead focus on giving us control of this money. Of course, we are willing to work with other parties on this, but we want to be able to make sure that none of this money goes to Hamas. We want to make sure that we know we are in control of the whole situation. So if you change this legislation in those terms and do not talk about the ceasefire, then we might change our position.
All right, but Mr. Prime Minister, you have not been able to give peace to your people for ever since you became Prime Minister, and you have no vision for peace for the people of Israel and Palestine. You brought so much death and destruction to the people of Israel and Palestine. Here, we are proposing $50 million grant to rebuild Israel and Gaza, and you are proposing to veto this legislation. And if you veto this legislation, as the president of the federal government, I will work hard against you to remove you and to have another prime minister elected to accept this legislation.
Well, I think it would be unreasonable on your part, because I am actually offering you a compromise.
What's the compromise?
That if you take away the reference to the ceasefire and you guarantee that we are fully in charge, fully in control, and we do not allow this money to go to terrorists, I would agree with this. But
all right. First of all, you cannot rebuild with the war going on. You cannot take away the ceasefire provision. And second of all, we are not terrorists. We are an independent, secular federal government, and we are, and your reading that we are going to turn the money to terrorists is unacceptable.
It is my duty as president to take care of my citizens, and I'm willing to examine new ideas in this sense, but okay. I cannot go further than what I have said.
All right, let's go to the Palestinian president. Mr. President, are you going to veto this legislation? Palestinian president.
I want an agreement from Israel that they will admit that we are a colony and have been a colony.
Are you going to veto this legislation?
Yes, I will, unless Israel agrees to admit that we are part of Israel and have been a colony of Israel for 70 years that they were responsible.
Okay. So I am going to do the same thing. I was elected by 1.5 million votes. You are not even a legitimate government. You have not been elected by anyone. And we are offering the people of Gaza, that you claim to be the president of the people in Gaza, we are offering them a way to rebuild their community, and you are coming up with an argument unrelated to this legislation, and you're turning down substantial amount of money for the people of Israel and Palestine. And I'm going to work out hard and speak to the people of Palestine to show them that you are not working for their benefit. But I think this is we exhausted that. Let's have the open discussion about, is Israel safe for the Jewish people? Open discussion. Does anyone want to have, in my opinion, Israel has proven to be an unsafe place for the Jewish people for 76 years. And the idea that we have to continue to give the Israeli and the Palestinian governments that have failed to give safety to the Jewish people and the Palestinian people, and to wait until they will wake up and change their policies is unreasonable. And I think that's why I think that a federal government is necessary, because what we have is a unsafe country for the people of Israel and Palestine, created by the governments of Israel and Palestine, especially the Israeli government. So I'm going to open this to a discussion. Let's have Professor Cohen express his opinion regarding this question. Is Israel safe for the Jewish people? Professor.
Yeah. I'll speak shortly because I would like to hear others too. I voted that the answer is definitely yes. There has been colossal thing of what happened October 7, unforgivable. It was a case of colossal disaster at all levels. But by and large, Israel is not only able to provide its people security for all those years, but it was, in a sense, a miracle, the fact that after the Holocaust, when the very existence of autonomous, secular Jewish life in some form of a culture of its own was almost on the verge of destructions, Israel was able to create a place where vibrant Hebraic life that takes place under the Hebrew language has taken place. It created incredible, vibrant culture. It's in a sense a miracle. And again, I'm not so clear whether without the Holocaust, that's the curse of in the blessing, that could have happened. But Israel is an incredible story of success by and large. Yes, there are colossal mistakes. Yes, unfortunately, Israel is running right now, in particular after the 1967 war, by different bad government, in particular the last one, and there is a great deal to make effort to remove and to depose this government and to move Israel towards a better future. But as a whole, in terms of the creation of Israel as a culture, as a place of autonomous life, I think it's a story of success. It's a miracle.
All right, let's go to Shlomo. Do you want to respond to that question? Is Israel safe for the Jewish people?
Well, overall not. It is not safe. But I must admit, I agree with many things that Avner said. This was a miracle, but apparently it was a house made of cards, and it is failing, and it is falling, and I predict that soon enough Israel will be on its knees. And when Israel will be on its knees, hopefully only politically and not physically, at that time we will need we will need this body of IPC that will, as a core around which we can build something new. I think I want to remind Avner and everybody that the two-state solution, which was a very good solution in many ways, it didn't work. It has not worked, and it will not work. So there is only one solution left, unfortunately, which is one state, one from the river to the sea. And the question, how this state will exist, how it will manage. And this is a way to think, just to think about management of this new state, new country. Who knows, maybe more than a country. Maybe it will be just an open space between, and the whole Middle East will be just one. Who knows? But how do we deal with each other? So, and Avner talked about soul searching. You know, it's like asking the Nazi Germany to do soul searching. They would not do so. They did eventually after they were on their knees. So this is how history works. And so unfortunately, I don't expect, and he's right, Avner is right. Right now, more than 70% of the Israelis are for the war, the genocide in Gaza, right? So there is nobody, if you ask the Israelis today, oh, how about the IPC? They will laugh. But at some point, they will not laugh. And at some point, that will be maybe, perhaps, the only solution. So we are, yes, it is imaginary to some extent, but maybe not so. I just hope that when Israel falls, and it will happen, that it will be with not that much bloodshed. And I agree, there is a risk of a lot of bloodshed when that happens. That's all I can say.
Avner, you want to respond to Shlomo, or you want me to go to the next one?
I'll say very briefly. I don't think that Israel will collapse. I am terribly afraid that Israel would move without quick and decisive change in its political leadership, which is not impossible. It's not terribly likely, but it depends how it's going to be the next election campaign. Israel might be even more right wing. I think the Likud is in the current position is on the verge of collapse. The question is who will replace it. There are all kinds of possibilities. I'm hearing that even people on the soft right, that is to say Lieberman and Bennett and Saar, are thinking, actually this is news I heard in recent days, kind of semi-political gossip, are thinking to some extent for them in a fresh way. They're ready to consider ideas that they have not thought before. It's a second-hand kind of political gossip I heard, but from good sources. So I think Israel is about to change very dramatically. I think it's possible. What direction it takes, it's difficult to say. Israel as Israel will exist. The question is what face it will have, what identity it will have, where it will go. In many ways, it's facing major questions between being fanatical state in the state of Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and the like, or some kind of a more liberal thing. And I think that significant majority of the Israelis would like to go on the majority side, even though as a result of October 7th, it seems that many has become more on the right. So it will see what will happen. We'll see what the future of the new right will happen after the end of the Likud in its present formation.
All right, let's go to Libby and then Sean. Libby?
I think that is Israel a safe place for Jews? Maybe sort of, but my feeling is that it's what the Jewish government is doing now is making it unsafe to be Jewish anywhere. I'm here in California, and I'm very active in Jewish-Palestinian dialogue activities, and have been for more than 30 years. And
where are you, Libby, by the way?
Excuse me?
Where are you in California?
Outside San Francisco. San Mateo area. And the dialogue activity is growing hugely right now because people feel what Israel is doing in Gaza is so dangerous and so painful and sad. And so it's really forcing us to think in new ways about how we're going to cooperate on this planet of ours that we all share. And so I do fear for Jews today who are being hassled, and on campus the demonstrations are against them, but I understand that because it's hard to watch what's happening in Gaza. So I feel like this is a very tough situation, and I totally hope that we can be creative and think outside the box. And I happen to know there's lots of groups like Combatants for Peace and Bereaved Parents and all sorts of groups through ALMAP and in the Middle East and Israel and the West Bank, where people, the grassroots people, definitely want something new. They definitely want to live in cooperation and feel safe and secure and be able to raise their families well. So I would like to propose that we continue to think outside the box and try to figure out how we're going to enable the grassroots and the people to participate in a process that brings some kind of security and safe living for the future generations, which right now looks very bleak. So let's not give up hope, and let's work for the benefit of the whole and not just for one country or one group, because we're all in it together.
All right, let's go to Sean.
Mr. Avner, you were mentioning earlier about the IPC that you kind of find imaginary, almost kind of like a joke. But and you mentioned that okay, yes, I agree. The Palestinian is not really doesn't really have power because there's Palestinian Authority. It doesn't, But my thing is, you want you said in order for this to happen, in order for IPC to happen, it's if there was a Palestinian entity and an Israeli entity, but I kind of disagree because it's not a fact of entities. It's a fact of the people of the Israeli and the Palestinian that wants the IPC. It's not a matter of who's power, who's what. Like the people decide what they want. The people will decide who they want their government to be. Not the other way around. Like the people create the government, not the government creating the people. So it's only the power of the people that create IPC, not how you mentioned about entities. This is what I and second is Israel a state safe for the Jews? I don't think so because Israel has hostilities with Lebanon, hostilities with Syria, hostilities with its neighbor. I don't know how that's going to work if Israel's a safe place when it's surrounded with hostile enemies. Yep, that's my concern. Thank you.
Okay, Giacomo, and then Fumiko.
Okay, I mean, I'm not Israeli. I've never been to Israel, so I don't know if I can answer the question. But what I want to say is, talk about the European experience. The EU 70 years ago was formed, and in all this time, not one single war has taken place within the EU. So for the safety and security of the French people, of the German people, of the Italian people, the EU has been a resounding success. So something like the IPC can provide exactly the sort of security for the whole region, for both Israelis and Palestinians. That's why I find the formula very attractive.
Thank you. Fumiko? You need to unmute, Fumiko. You need to unmute. You need to unmute. You're still muted. Perfect.
Is that okay now?
Yeah, you're okay.
Can you hear me? Okay. So talking about the sort of the question, the kind of the statement, is Israel safe or unsafe? Okay. I think it's not safe at all. Okay. Why? Because I feel just I spent a kibbutz, and I had a great time over there. And then what they have been doing now, okay, not only in Gaza, also the 78 years or so after since the establishment of the Israeli nation, okay, and then so I just follow. I also did the research, okay, and then so my conclusion is right now, especially Israeli Jews are, as far as the state of mind is concerned, just to me, it's beyond my understanding. It's insane. Okay, so that's why it's natural. Okay, I also chat with my friend in Israel, and so but I cannot give a kind of sort of general statement, but I had an impression that many people, okay, would like to leave, especially leave for another country. Okay, and so in a way, so bright side for me, okay, young generation, okay, they have a guts to speak out, and then so I count on the young generation, Okay, they want to. Okay, they want to have very normal way of thinking. Okay, and so, but right now, what they are doing, especially the government is doing, okay, and is really, really kind of, I don't know how to put it, but just bleak. So I don't know how it's going. And so if I live in this, okay, Israel right now, okay, I'm not a Jew, and so I just even if I'm Jew and so I want to leave, I want to leave another country. Okay, and so that's really, but it's life is one time, and so it's limited, and so that's why it's just I cannot accept. I hope so many more and more young people, okay, are aware of more, okay, importance of moral issue. And then so I'm in a way happy that they just speak out to show what the moral issue is important, and so hypocritical politicians, and so they just think about their own interests, and so the political minded oriented people are more and more, and so that's why I'm in a way I don't count on any politician in Israel, and so that's why I just expect the young generation do something. They can do something. That's
Avner, do you
why.
have response to?
Yeah, yeah, I'll say briefly. First, I want to know that even after this colossal disaster, the worst in Israel's entire history, worse than the Yom Kippur War in many respects, Israel has not faced any existential threat to its very existence, physical existential threat to its existence. Secondly, I just want to note that over the last few decades, but in particular under the nearly 15 years that Benjamin Netanyahu is in power, and after the collapse of the Oslo process, a process that was well meant but badly directed and badly managed, and with a lot of internal flaws. Benjamin Netanyahu gave many Israelis, not only he was able to divide the country to the extent that it was never done before. Israel was always divided, yes, but Benjamin Netanyahu's entire regime was based on division, rule and divide the country internally, and trying to give this arrogant and actually false attitude as if you can dismiss the Palestinian issue and you can continue live the normal good economy life. You can even have a peace with Saudi Arabia. This was false. This was shatter in the face of the Israelis after October 7th, and this was very much the result of his government and the spirit. It started before him, but he was pushing it to the extent that we haven't seen before. That's why I'm saying that Israel political needs on its own to reach different conclusions about its future, about its directions, and to realize that there is no way for Israel to keep in its normalcy, in peace, without addressing seriously the Palestinian issue, ultimately having a Palestinian state and deal with it in a fair and honest way. We are so far from that, and Netanyahu was trying to give the illusion as if we can do it while dismissing the very spirit of Palestinian national spirit. He failed, and October 7th is the proof of that.
I want to give Imitias Udin. Imitias Udin, you raise your hand. You want to speak about this issue or this subject?
Yes, thank you for allowing me to make a comment. Injustice and oppression creates enemies. And for Israel to have safety, I think the question of injustice to other people must be addressed in sincerity. That will ensure long-term survival and safety for the people of Israel.
I agree. Totally.
That's
All right.
my thought.
Thank you. Let's go to our post-simulation survey. After you participated in the simulation, please vote. This is for Israelis and Palestinians, all of the audience today, please vote. Do you support a common federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine? Please vote.
Joseph, there are a few more comments by people.
Okay, we'll go to them. Okay. We need more votes. So publish the vote. 19 out of 22 voted yes, that's 86%. And 3 out of 22 voted no. That's 14%. So there is a slight change against the common federal government, but the numbers also are different. So it's not easy to compare, but based on the percentage, there is a slight change against the idea of a common federal government, slight change. All right, let's go to the next vote, and that is Israel safe for the Jewish people? We'll compare that. Please vote is yes or no. If you feel it's safe, then vote yes. If you feel it's not safe, vote no. Before we had 23% said yes, and 77% said no. Please publish the vote. Now it's 13% said that it is yes, vote, in other words, that it is safe, and 87% said no. So there is also a change, and more people feel that it's not safe for the people of Israel and Palestine. Okay, so now we are going to talk about the IPC. Is it a perfect plan? What's the alternative? About the assumptions, again, I'm going to go back to these assumptions and ask Professor Cohen again to tell us what he thinks of these assumptions is unrealistic, and then we'll go to closing remarks. So if we can have a discussion about these assumptions, I believe these assumptions are very realistic, and let's have a discussion about whether Israel or the Palestinians have a better plan for peace, because the goal is peace. Professor Cohen, do you?
Yeah. Just very briefly, and it's along the lines that I already expressed myself. I think that a lot of energy should be given in a variety of ways towards reconciliation, and time is in the essence. It's more important now than ever before. That's terribly important. There is not just one way to do it. It could be done at various levels, various dimensions. If this is one of them, that's fine. I think this particular go into the minutiae of the details of confederations when there is no Palestinian state, and much of the Israeli public is not ready for a Palestinian state. And there are many in the Palestinian side who are still advocating the Hamas. There is so much work that needs to be done before you can go into the future cooperation between these two entities. So I think it's a little waste of energy to spend into that. I understand that, Yossi, it's important to you. You spend a lot of time, so you care about that. I don't give much in terms of the feasibility of that, but I think that any attention and any focus towards reconciliation is being blessed. Energy should be given to that, and I personally will be part of that.
All right, let me respond to that. First, reconciliation, and the other, no Palestinian state. The Israeli government is the opposite of reconciliation. The Israeli government
The
has
current
failed.
Israeli government. This government is dead. It will be gone very, very soon.
Yeah, since
Not much,
19
not much
since-
attention should be turned into this current
Okay, let me make it
cursed government.
let me make it a little more blunt. A Jewish state has caused the problem to begin with. There is no way that the Palestinians, who are mostly non-Jews, mostly Muslims, will accept the idea of a Jewish state. You cannot impose a Jewish state in the middle of the Middle East with over large number of Muslims and say, we want to create a Jewish state, and by the way, let's reconciliate. That's not going to happen.
I totally
because they will
disagree.
never.
There is a Jewish state. It's 70 something percent Jewish. Most of the Israeli Arabs, Israeli Palestinians supports that state and want to cooperate that. They need to have individual rights and collective rights to a degree, but that coexistence has proved itself. There were problems, of course, it's not perfect, but that coexistence has proved itself within Israel, by and large.
Yeah, but we are speaking about the Palestinians, not the Arabs.
The Palestinians deserve to be a state of their own.
The Palestinians inside Israel basically had no choice. They do not accept the concept of a Jewish state. They shouldn't accept the concept.
No, you cannot speak on their behalf.
Well,
most of them,
look at the votes that has been going on in Knesset.
Yeah.
All right, but so there cannot be reconciliation between.
I totally disagree with that.
Between a Jewish state and Muslims who oppose, who feel that this is their country, who feel that
look, Israel exists. There is 22% Arabs. There is 70 something percent, 72, 73% Jews. There is a number of percent of others. And that's the composition of the country.
I do not deny that Israel exists. I'm speaking about your concept
with a strong Jewish majority.
Right. I do not deny that. I am speaking about your concept of reconciliation. The Palestinians will not accept reconciliation with a Jewish state.
On behalf of whom you're speaking?
I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone.
But you said the Palestinians would not accept.
I'm giving my opinion. I'm not speaking. I'm not pretending to speak. I am
and my
giving
view is
my
that
opinion.
You're totally wrong about
After
that.
76 years, I see constant war. And by the way, I strongly disagree with you that Israel is a safe country. It's been 76 years of constant wars.
And look
fighting.
what has kind of creation. Look how many immigrants came from Russia to Israel.
It does
Some
not
left,
make it,
but
it
many
does not
came.
make it safe.
It's by and large very safe.
I agree with you that Israel is economic success. I agree with you that
Not
Israel
just
is the
economic
military,
success.
but it's in constant war. And by the way, you are a nuclear expert. Israel is a tiny country with multiple nuclear power.
Yeah.
That means that it knows by itself that it's unsafe and is resorting to nuclear power in order to have the Samsonite solution because it knows that it's unsafe. The other issue is no Palestinian state. I agree with you. There is no Palestinian state. But the best way, if a Palestinian state is going to happen, the best way to create a Palestinian state is not by the Israeli government. It's by a common federal government with parliament members voting Palestinians and Israelis. Look, the idea of dividing the land is the problem, It's
We
not the
disagree with that.
solution. The idea that Israel is trying to impose a solution based on land is anytime you touch upon that, including 1948, including all the discussions, is the most difficult issues that creates more antagonism, more violence. So the idea of let's continue and divide the land means let's have more violence. Now, if we truly want to have two states, the best way to do it is not by the Israeli government or the Palestinian government, is by Israeli and Palestinian parliament members who are elected by the people of Israel and Palestine, who sits there in dignity, who sits there in fairness, and decide on a border.
Yossi, there is no traction whatsoever with that kind of proposal, and that kind of proposal needs as a prerequisite to have a Palestinian entity. It doesn't exist. Let's put our energy to make that happen.
The common federal government could help create, and we are not taking that away. We're saying, fine.
You put the horse before the cards.
No, there is no horse before the cart.
Yeah.
The Israeli government has already proven that they cannot put the horse before the cart. That idea that we are the exclusive formula for putting the horse before the cart is a total failure. It's insisting on continuing with the failure. So I think that it is possible. I think that it's easy to create a common federal government. It takes probably somewhere around $100 million. And if you truly want peace, I think you should examine that formula. Does anyone have any other comment? Professor Cohen also.
Yeah, one very quickly. I think the idea of the IPC was to bypass the governments. We don't trust the governments. The governments were the enemy, have been the enemy of the people on all ends, as usual, and many other places on this globe. So that's number one. Number two, so that was the idea of the IPC. And the problem is, and here Avner is right, majority of Israel, majority of Palestinians would like it. Majority of Israel is not yet. They are not yet there, but in the future. The fear that I have now is that Israel is becoming a black hole. It will cross on itself, will take all the Jews with it, and who knows, with the atomic bomb, and this I leave it to you, because the question to you, they may use it eventually out of desperation and whatever. Because another scenario, I don't know what you think, but if Israel is going to exterminate all the Palestinians in Gaza, which they seem to be, and nobody blocked them, then
it will never happen.
You know,
and they know they cannot happen. It cannot happen.
I hope so. I hope so. But this is what Israel has been doing so far, and then Hezbollah will get in, and then there will be no motivation to fight even. So I'm not sure. Israel is in a very fragile state right now with a government that the people don't trust anyway for good reasons. I don't know. It seems to me very bleak right now. But I leave it to you. What do you think?
You're asking.
I think Avner. So do you think they won't go to Rafah? They are in Rafah right now in Rafah.
Well, as you know, there are growing Israeli voices, including a lot of former generals who are saying that their whole Rafah exercise is not serving Israel interest, perhaps except the Philadelphia passing. And it's better for Israel. I think there are more and more voices for Israel. I think it's for Bibi Netanyahu, it's difficult to admit failure, and he would try to push to the extent he can. But there are more and more Israelis who think that Israel should unilaterally end the war, not unilaterally, but end the war, hold the hostages, and whatever needs to be done could be done months, years later, in a different way by the different government. This government does not have a mandate anymore to exercise and to perpetuate the war. I think that number is growing. I believe that the life of this government as the legal government, legitimate government of Israel is in weeks. I believe that within weeks will be a date for a new election, sometimes in the fall or sometimes at worst early next year. And Israel will have to vote a new leadership. I think the entire political landscape in Israel might change. I hope so, and I think there are chances for that, and we'll see where it will go. I want to say 2 words about the nuclear stuff. yes, Israel has nuclear weapon, but in a very, very different way than any other country. It has, but it doesn't have. Israel has put on itself a lot of constraints in the way that it organizes its nuclear weapon, it deploys its nuclear weapons, and it put a lot of built-in constraints against its ever use, virtually under any circumstances. Not many people recognize it and knows that. Yes, there is a danger if suddenly we'll have a different government, not even the Bibi Netanyahu current government, but a government that people like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich will run it. Those built-in constraints, which were created over decades, could be loosened and could change. But at the present time, I can hardly conceive a situation that Israel ever use its nuclear weapons. It's so built in that these are political weapons to give a sense of the survival of Israel under any circumstances, not a military weapons. And I want to assure the few people here that this is the view of essentially all the professionals, the nuclear professionals of Israel over years. I have a lot of discussion and debates with them about transparency and about the postures and about all that. But I do believe that Israel is extremely responsible as a nuclear weapon state, perhaps more than any other nuclear weapon state in the world.
All right, let's go to Shiraz and then Fumiko again. Shiraz, go ahead. Shiraz Ramji.
Thank you for sharing your experiences. My question is about the dual citizens who are living in Israel and many even in the settlements. What kind of future is there? Are they going to return to their respective countries or not? Because the way the present information goes, many are returning to their ancestral country in Europe, in Russia, in Ukraine, United States. So are there any, because the population of Israel is based not on the residents, but more on the number of passports, Israeli passports. Can you comment on that, please? Thank you.
So are you asking whether the settlements will be dismantled?
No, he didn't.
Yes. Sorry?
Okay, that was okay, go ahead. Regarding
who'd ask when it's directed to?
To you.
Yeah, you and yeah.
Well, you know, people with dual citizens can do whatever they want to do. They can leave Israel, they can stay in Israel. It's up to them. Yes, there is a small emigration out of Israel currently. It's to a degree growing. It's not yet a huge phenomenon, but it's a tiny bit growing. About settlement, the future of that and how Israel would that would be determined in the, I mean, right now, as you know, unfortunately, there is some over 600,000 Israelis who live in the West Bank in various kind of settlements.
Most are Americans, yeah.
Some of them Americans, yes. What would be the future of that? That's terribly complicated issue, difficult issues, and that will have to be negotiated, whatever it will go. As I said, I'm a little bit optimistic that the future Israeli political map, the soon future, the near future, is going to be very, very different. Netanyahu has become more and more irrelevant. He's fighting for his personal survival, for his political survival, but it's a futile fight. Essentially, even the right to realize that he's a political dead walking. For how long? He still has some power right now, but for how long? I think it's a matter of weeks, maximum months. And that's the view of most people on the Israeli agenda. It doesn't mean it's the end of the Israeli political right, but it will be a different political right. So let's see how it will dissolve itself, how the country would how the future would evolve. We do not know.
Fumiko,
do you have any estimates of how many Israelis are dual citizens?
What's the question?
What's the percentage of Israeli Jews have dual citizenship? Do you have an estimate?
I have no idea. I would assume 10-15%. You know, there is a lot of Israelis who come to the US with an interest that their children will be born here, so will have dual citizenship. If you look roughly at the people from the kidnapped in Gaza, initially it was some 250 or so. I think my sense was that somewhere between 10 to 20% of them had dual citizenship. To what extent it's reflective of the entire country, I do not know. Roughly, I think 10-15%, it seems to me fair.
Fumiko, you have a question or comment? You need to unmute. And then we're going to conclude. Fumiko, you need to unmute. You're still muted. You need to unmute. Go to the left bottom
Press
button.
Alt A.
You need to unmute, Fumiko.
Press Alt plus A.
No, it's
Okay, go
okay.
ahead.
Okay, so just like to ask the Dr. Avner. Oh, he's left already? Oh, Avner?
I'm still here,
about
yeah.
the nuclear facility, okay, and issue. I think, Israel really, developed the nuclear facility very early age. I would say just right after, almost like 2 years later, after the establishment of the nation. Okay, and so I'm wondering if the nuclear facility is now very old, and then so they have to really renovate, or they have to do something that would cost a lot. And so I'm just wondering. And then so another thing is, okay, I would like to ask you about the Israeli government, okay, have not made an official, okay, declaration or whatever you call it. And so Israel has possesses the nuclear powers, but still kind of pretty ambiguous. And I just would like to know, that's purposely still, but still just they would keep it secret. What the reason behind
let me
that?
respond very quickly to what you raised. The
Mhm.
fact that Israel has a nuclear weapons, even though it has never been formally acknowledged by the state of Israel, is the worst kept secret, as is the title of one of my book. Everybody knows that.
Mhm.
However, Israel has dealt with nuclear, as you know, Israeli official line is that it will not be the first to introduce nuclear weapons, which is kind of ambiguous, kind of tricky, but there is also a great deal of reality behind it. Not many people respect and understand that. And the
Mhm.
reality behind it is, roughly speaking, the following. Israel, unlike any other nuclear weapon state, has organized its nuclear weapons infrastructure in a very distinct way, a way that is very different from any other countries. And I would say just the following. Israel has separated geographically and organizationally between its military assets and its nuclear assets. Nuclear assets and military assets do not reside and run by the same organization in the same place. The IDF does not have nuclear weapons. So it's a nuclear weapon state where its army does not possess, does not own, has no custodianship over nuclear weapons. That creates a great deal of distance between nuclear weapons by the very structure between nuclear weapons and military platforms. No other countries that has nuclear weapons, including India and Pakistan, let alone the US, the UK, France, Russia, has organized itself with those kind of safeguards. It's a unique, a distinct Israeli way to handle this. In a sense, what I told you right now is something that Israel itself has never acknowledged. I don't think it's classified, but it has never acknowledged. It has never put as a statement, because Israel does not speak at all about its nuclear weapons. But I just want to hint, or I want to say actually, that Israel has treated that area with a great deal of attitude of solemnity and sacredness. It's something distinct, it's something not to be used, and that's the reason why there is this difference and distance between military assets and nuclear assets. They are not together organizationally, they are not together geographically, and I would not go beyond that.
So who controls the nuclear weapons in Israel? Who has the authority to
Ultimately,
use
the
them?
prime minister, and the prime minister is not alone, and it's done through the Atomic Energy Commission, which is not the IDF. And it's a very different structure of governance. I mean, essentially, the entire governance is not in the public domain. It's almost every part of it, essentially every part of it is classified. But what I've said is in essence the very structure, and it's a very different structure than other countries manage their nuclear forces. And it also shows how much it treats those assets as a sacred asset, not to be used virtually under any circumstance unless the very existence of the nation, of the state, is under peril. In 1973, when some people were concerned deeply that Israel may lose the Golan Heights and Syrian may move into Israel proper, even then Golda Meir has not authorized much in terms of putting together, assembling together nuclear weapons. So that should be remembered. In 1967, Israel had a very embryonic possessions of devices. It has not made any statement. It has not taken any actions. So it's a long history of attitude of keeping a great deal of safeguard and gravity and solemnity in terms of attitude towards nuclear weapons.
All right, I would like to make closing remarks. I believe that a common democratic confederation federal government can bring peace. It's the only way to bring peace. The government of Israel has proven itself as unable to make peace. Online elections are feasible. Israel is spending over $3 billion a week on this war in Gaza. Fraction of that could make a federal government a reality. And the current governments in Israel and Palestine are not legitimate because they are not elected by the people of Israel and Palestine. We are proposing the creation of a federal legitimate government that will be elected by the Palestinians and the Israeli people together. In my estimate, about $100 million could make that reality. This is what you can buy for $100 million. So I want to thank Professor Cohen, and I'll give you I want to thank you for your courtesy, for your time, and for your willingness to engage with us and give you, if necessary, closing remarks. And if not, then we'll just move on and have another simulation in 2 weeks from now. Professor Cohen, you have a...
No, I enjoy, even despite our major disagreement, fundamental disagreement, I enjoy to be with this forum. It was a great opportunity to meet my good friend Anat, who is among the audience. We made some exchanges. It was a pleasure to be with you. Disagreement putting aside, I think that all of us are sharing the vision of having a better future, not happy about the current future, and would like to transcend and to move beyond where we are now.
Yeah,
so in that respect, we all
thank
share
you.
that.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your time and your courtesy and cooperation and your graciousness in being willing to take these attacks, especially by me. And
that's fine.
Yeah, I hope you don't take it personal.
No.
Yeah.
Perhaps Anat can say something?
Sure.
How about Anat? if she
Oh,
is.
What?
Oh, your friend, she never had an opportunity to speak.
I would love to hear Anat. I haven't heard her voice
Anat
for a long, long
Gillespie.
time.
Okay, Anat.
No, I've been here forever. Thank you, Joseph. I want to say that I'm here all the time. I usually don't talk. I agree with Avner 100%. I'm even more despondent and pessimistic than he is. I was
I know.
I thought I would press a button every time he said something optimistic because I'm so pessimistic.
Yeah.
And I look at this as perhaps an intellectual exercise. I'm glad that other people see it as a practical thing. I don't. I am really, I think most of us and most of my friends in Israel, most of my friends here, also Jewish friends, the Palestinians are more optimistic than we are, but the Jewish and Israeli friends are really in a state of despair. So I come to these games, and I say games positively because I'm a Wittgensteinian. I look at these games as an exercise that might make us think about something a little differently. And actually, this time around, I got a lot of that, mostly from Avner. So
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. So are you a professor also?
She is.
I was in Tel Aviv University for a few decades, and then I left Israel for political reasons, basically, when I lost all hope. And I've been at Quinnipiac University now for a while.
Where?
Quinnipiac. I know it's your little college on the hillside in Connecticut. Quinnipiac. It's the Quinnipiac poll. We run the Quinnipiac polls.
And what do you teach?
Philosophy.
Oh.
Anat is a pillar of human rights and democracy. She was in Israel. She is here. She is a friend from high school. I know her for decades, and I love Anat. And just for Anat, I'm happy delighted for being on this forum. So thank you very much, Anat. Great to see you.
All right.
Thanks, Joseph, and thanks
Thank
everybody.
you. Thank you so
am here
much,
every week.
everyone. And Anat, continue to participate. And Avner, I hope you continue to participate.
Maybe.
Yeah. All right. Thank you
Good
so
to
much,
see everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm glad to finish this in good spirit for everyone.
Very much so.
All right.
Good to see everybody.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you, Baba.
Thank you.